So we're going to give you an overview, and I put this up there, NDI 3.8, because if you're following us, we're very close to releasing NDI 4.0. So we'll save any questions about that if you know about that for the end. But otherwise, this is how NDI looks today. So the origins of NDI, we've been doing this for internally over 10 years, but we released NDI into the public at IBC 2015. Mike talked about it's a free software IP protocol, and there's an entire SDK and development tools all for free. So as part of that free notion, we have had unprecedented adoption of NDI. Over 2,000 companies have a product today that you can purchase that does NDI. Here's a couple of the big names in the field. We got Panasonic, Skype. If you have Skype desktop client downloaded to your Windows computer, you have a Skype NDI feed. You can set that up tomorrow. Avid recently adopted NDI into their Media Composer workflow. Obviously, the great guys over at LiveView. Panasonic has an entire NDI line. We are all about supporting and making this IP protocol a real thing. You know, recently we got acquired by VizRT, so maybe this slide's a little dated. But all the way from VizRT to vMix, we have NDI out there. And companies like Sony this year announced that NDI is adopting them. They're adopting NDI in their cameras. So it's grown pretty unprecedentedly. What does NDI stand for? NDI is the Network Device Interface. It is our open protocol that we developed that goes over local area networks. And so we're going to go over some of these pieces if you've never heard of any of these terms and break all that down. NDI carries video, multi-channel audio, and metadata. And why do we use metadata? Well, we can assign tags in metadata and use that for cool production needs. So in getting into post-production workflows, but even some of your live production workflows, we can control those cameras around the studio via NDI. Real basic stuff, if you guys never seen this before, what is a LAN, a local area network? Is a group of computers associated with and associated devices that share a common communication line. Whenever we talk about NDI, and in this facility, there is a local network connecting all of these devices together so they can talk. Mike talked about earlier that there is a Sienna product that is talking about NDI Cloud. It's designed to also do wide area network NDI. When we get into some of the nitty gritty here, it'll make sense why some of the wide area network applications aren't there for NDI, but trust me, we are working towards development of NDI in the WAN as well. Let's talk about some familiarity points. I'm sure all of you guys have a home network. Maybe it's a box provided by your local internet provider. Maybe you set something up yourself. Most of these things are complex devices actually, but it's your most common exposure. And it does a few things. It probably looks something like that. And it is both a small switch, router, it's a DHCP server, and it does your wireless network. It does all of those things. We're going to discuss how that relates to what we do in NDI, because all of those are important distinctly. So a switch is what we're going to use to talk between two IP-enabled devices. There's two kinds of switches, unmanaged and managed. The base idea here for NDI, what you need to take away is, if you're going to do less than 8 things in NDI, so if you're going to have less than 8 cameras or sources, you could probably go to your local Best Buy tomorrow and buy something for less than $100 that will produce your NDI network. You don't need anything too fancy. When we start to talk about more complex networks, such as what we have here, that's when you're going to need something that's managed. And the short story is, we get more features, but it's a little more complex to manage. Router devices. A lot of times we talk about people, what's a router versus what's a switch. So routers are sort of talking and giving physical and virtual appliances that will sort of pass packets between networks. They're going to do the talking in between what you have. So a router is important for our NDI network because while these systems can all be connected on a local network, you need to send data. We need to send that video. We need to send that audio across. So you're going to need a router, and it's also needed for DNS, which is really important. It's sort of the local addresses of your computer devices. DHCP is really important. It's something we use a lot in NDI. It's the Dynamic Host Protocol, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. The short story is everything you probably do at home is DHCP. When you put your phone on the local Wi-Fi network, it gets a DHCP address. We use that same concept for NDI, and the reason we use DHCP is we want you to do as little IT configuration as possible. I want you to be able to plug 3 things into a switch and be able to work in NDI. So in general, we like to do things in DHCP. It doesn't have to be, but it's useful. So as we start to build for NDI, what are we looking for in our switches? Well, we're looking for things that have full gigabit. So, you know, effectively the math you're doing is a gigabit per port, and we have some basic numbers there. We want a switch that does DHCP if possible. And we're looking for also PoE+. PoE is really important for some of these devices you'll see up front. The Spark Pro and the PTZ1 camera are all PoE Plus capable. So we put that plus there. For those of you who don't know what PoE is, that's power over Ethernet. If you've seen the tagline that you can do all of it over one cable, with one network cable, you can plug that into that camera on the desk and get power, control, video, and audio all throughout your network. You could put that anywhere in that facility with one cable and literally do the entirety of the production. Some base numbers here for you guys if you're PoE people. The amount of wattage and things. Most people encounter PoE, they're used to their desktop phone, which needs very low wattage. These devices require quite a little bit more, and that's why they need the PoE+. These are just some basic numbers, 25.5 watts for the camera, 15 watts for the Spark Pro. These are the two devices we talk about when we're talking about PoE. Then I have a little slide here that talks about budgeting. All switches have a PoE budget. So that's the total amount of wattage they'll be able to distribute. And then the obvious alternative is to use a PoE injector. If you have questions about that after our talk, I'm more than willing to give you some guidance. Cabling. So we're switching over from SDI. We're switching to network cables. Typically, we're talking about Category 5E or Cat 5E cables. But there are a variety of cables, things like Cat 6A, Cat 7. All of these things have strengths and sort of begin to allow you to do more. When we're talking about 4K NDI, because NDI does 4K today, that needs Cat 6A. And you may need 10 gigabit routing to do those 4K signals. NDI, as always, like other Ethernet protocols, can be converted to glass, fiber. So you just convert from Ethernet to fiber, and now you're doing NDI over extremely long distances. Just like your standard SDI cable, Cat 5 cable runs about 300 feet before you need to do something with it. There's no reclocking for your SDI cables, you can reclock them. You don't need to worry about with Cat 5, you just hit another switch and sort of go from there. This is going to be an NDI breakdown, and so that's sort of we got through all the facts and general 101 information. Here's what we're trying to do with NDI. Be auto self-discovering, span networks, and find sources by name. When you're using an NDI ecosystem, an NDI product, you don't memorize IP addresses. What are you looking for? You're looking for a PTZ camera? When you go to your TriCaster and you select the source, it will say Newtek PTZ or Panasonic PTZ or Lumen's PTZ or Marshall PTZ. Eventually it'll say Sony PTZ. You're just looking for the name of the product. I don't have to worry what are these IP addresses and what port and all that stuff. We take care of that in NDI. We're also completely interoperable between NDI generations. We're talking about NDI 3.8 today, 4.0 in the future. We've gone through 4 generations of NDI in those 4 years. So if you have an original NDI device and you've never updated, it will still work with your TriCaster today because we will always interoperate. The other thing we really do is we do conversions from all kinds of standards. You can intermix PAL and NTSC signals. You can intermix other IP sources. We do a lot of that in NDI. If it is a standard and source today, an IP standard, we support it in NDI. We'll either convert from their standard into NDI or from NDI into their standard. Obviously, we support the bevy of traditional broadcast formats, and 60Ps and 60s and 30s at 2997 and 5994. But we're always interoperation and useful. We want it to always work on a 1 gigabit network infrastructure, and the biggest reason there is that will keep your costs fairly minuscule. You don't have to get new switches, and probably you don't have to get new cabling. You could probably integrate NDI in all your facilities today. Now, as we start to look at the future, things like 4K, 8K, 16K, obviously we'll need to make some upgrades, but they won't be so severe because we designed this to be usable today. Obviously, as we get to higher volume resources as well, maybe you need to upgrade. We have facilities today that have over 650 live NDI sources recording. They have a slightly more robust network than what you could get at Best Buy. NDI's goal is to be flexible. We always consistently add new features and functionality as we iterate on NDI. The big piece of that is NDI is developed as software. It is developed to be accommodating, flexible, and fluid. This is the way we've been able to continually stay ahead of the game the last 4 years. We initially started as a TCP client. We've graduated to a UDP client. In the very near future, we'll be an MTCP client. We continue to work and look at what your feedback is and say, how can we make NDI better for you? And the kicker of all that is it's a free upgrade. Download the latest firmware for your system, and you're now working in a better NDI environment than you were. Obviously, a large amount of third parties are already using NDI because of its practicality. This is a standard by adoption. This is a standard because you guys want it to be one. We didn't set out and go to any boards or work with anybody. We said we want this to be out there, be in your hands, and you guys tell us what's wrong. You guys tell us how it needs to be better, and we continue to meet those demands today. We talked about that it's a software-based protocol. NDI is always bidirectional, so sources are always talking back and forth to one another. If you go to that TriCaster and pull a source in from that VMC in the back, tally will be presented to that system to say, hey, this source is going somewhere. If I pull the camera in, it'll start to say, hey, I'm being used, and it'll present a tally forward. That bidirectionality allows us to do a lot of cool things, allows us to do control, allows us to pass audio and video, and it's really useful. The other cool thing we do is we are resolution and frame rate independent. NDI does not care what you present it. It will always give you a usable version of that. I do a lot of esports work. A lot of people have weird computer setups, and PlayStations render at weird resolutions. If you send that system into an NDI ecosystem, you will be able to use that in production today. How many people here have done one of these presentations and had to have someone with a Mac laptop, and you plug the HDMI thing, and the projector doesn't work because it's a funky resolution? You're constantly unplugging and plugging, checking all the pieces. If you plug that Mac device into an NDI-enabled Spark, it will be NDI for the whole production. You can hit your projector without any issues. The NDI protocol is a smart protocol. It recognizes when it gets asked to be used, what resolution are you running at? So these sessions are in 1080p, but I can have a 720p device very easily integrated, or I could have a 4K device easily integrated. I didn't pay for an extra card. I didn't pay for an upgrade. It's all in NDI. It's 16-bit color computations, any audio sampling rate, support for a million different things, video key, audio control, tally, custom metadata. That last one, precision timestamp, when we released NDI 4.0 and revolutionized the way you can record any NDI stream, that is what we're going to use to keep all of your NDI sources in sync. Numbers, details. What does an SDI signal look like? What does that look like in NDI from megabits per second? How many signals can you get per cable? So we look at something that's 12G, and we can get 2 streams per 1 gig cable at 4K 60p. That's on a 1 gigabit network. If we upgrade that to a 10 gigabit network, obviously we just add a 0 to all these guys. So you think about the nature of your production today and how many cables it will require you to get 173G SDI streams into your router and then into all your production facilities from your cameras, and just think about 1 cable coming off the back of that device and hitting your router once. And now everybody else can now get access to it. And if that device is a piece of production equipment like we have here, that TriCaster can grab that TriCaster's information, that tracker can grab that TriCaster's information. If you really want to get deep, you can grab the user interface and overlay everything and have a crazy cool video feedback loop of all the sources going back and forth through each other. But the whole idea being that it's, this is the strength of NDI. I don't have to have a cable for every source necessarily. Or from 1 cable, I don't have to hit a network router. For those of you guys who've looked at some of these other things, this is a visual representation of 12G SDI, 2 contemporary other IP protocols, SMPTE 2022, SMPTE 2110. The graph's a little funky, but you're effectively seeing for the resolutions at the bottom, how much bit rate and data is it needing. And down all the way at the bottom is effectively what we do in NDI. So a 4K stream of NDI goes from what be 12 gig all the way down to 350 meg. So that is the efficiency we're looking for. We are doing a lot of amazing things, but we're retaining that visual quality. It's still production ready. This is a really important point, and I'm sure a couple of you guys have seen this stuff in the wild. NDI HX, this is another version of NDI we make. It's our high efficiency protocol. It runs at about a little over 15 meg for a 1080 60p. So that's about 1/10 of the total bandwidth. If you have a church, if you have a school, if you have someone who can do nothing to their NDI, to the networking infrastructure today, you can put an NDI HX device on it and it will still work because the signal is that small. Now, if you have a really strong internet signal that goes out, you could put an NDI device on the wide area network because they're Wi-Fi enabled. So now we start to look at how do we engineer things to be greater in the NDI world. And so the NDI HX, I think sometimes gets a bad rap, but it has its purpose, and this is its purpose. It's extremely light. There's some caveats there. Obviously, we talk about the bit rate. It's much slimmer than NDI with a couple restrictions. So for something like this IMAX situation, you might not use an HX source. It's maybe 3 frames more delayed. But consider that that difference in delay is for that ease of use. You know that that HX source is going to work on your network tomorrow. So we make some products that are NDI HX. If you see the words NDI HX on that box, that's what it does. A good chunk of the PTZ cameras are NDI HX today. Good stuff. Most of the stuff that we make contemporarily does full NDI. So it's generationally lossless for over 1,000 generations. We obviously already have support with HDR. Today we're doing things in UDP. We also support TCP, and one of the big pieces that powers all this and this ease of use is MDNS. This is a bunch of tech jargon, but the short story is NDI probably supports the video you're looking for today, and we do it pretty simply. Typically, this is the point of the presentation where I would show you guys a bunch of slides about visualization, but I actually want to turn this over and do this live in this environment. We're going to have 2 of the third parties, a guy from Panasonic and one of the guys from LiveView come up, talk about their NDI, and I'm going to show you NDI live right here. Let's just visualize it in the studio. So are we ready from third parties? Yes, sir.
Hello, everybody. Steve Slade with Panasonic. We're happy to partner with Keycode to be at this event. We have been on board with NDI and Newtek from the beginning for a couple of reasons Chris brought up. It's affordable, it's ready now, it works, it's an open protocol, and everything about that is attractive to us. All of our cameras that we have in our entire lineup are NDI capable. And what I've got here today is I've got our top-of-the-line Cinema Chip UE150 PTZ camera. So I brought PTZ cameras tonight. We have a brand new CX350, which is a handheld 4K camcorder that also has NDI. It's our first camcorder with NDI built in. I have a UE70, which is also a 4K camera, and our streaming switcher and our controller. So I just wanted to let you know that we have some stuff here. After they're done with their presentation, if you want to come over and see it, you're welcome to come over, answer any questions that I can. Happy to be here, and hopefully you guys like the products that we have here. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, how you doing? My name is George Klippel from LiveView. Welcome, and I want to thank you for coming, and glad to be participating with the event here from Keycode Media. Before I get started, I'd like to just see a quick show of hands. How many folks either use LiveView or know about LiveView? Oh, okay, about half the room. That's great. So, real quick before I get started, just want to let you know a little bit about who LiveView is. And before I do, as far as an NDI partner, LiveView has been a partner with NDI since day one. We were the first, or close to being the first partner with NDI. We had the API very early on and recognized it was going to be a successful partnership and something really important for us going forward. And whether I go into house of worship or education institutions or production facilities, NDI is really out there and being used everywhere. And our relationship with NDI is tremendous, and with Newtek is tremendous. And having Keycode as a partner, one of our biggest partners in the country, actually. They really understand NDI, and you're welcome, Mike. You understand really the NDI workflow and LiveView and the integration. We're going to show you that in a demo in just a second. But for those of you who didn't raise your hand and don't understand what LiveView is, it's all about cellular bonding workflow. We're over 60% of the marketplace today in that workflow. We were founded in 2006, shipped our first products in 2008. So we have, we're in broadcast, house of worship, education, corporate, you name it, we're kind of in that space. And this is how the workflow really works. You have a field unit or a backpack encoder solution that connects to a camera, any type of source, if you will. And that can be SDI, that can be HDMI for an input. And then what we do, our secret sauce is really taking multiple connections like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, even Wi-Fi or Ethernet, and bonding those connections together to give you an ultra fat type of connectivity over the internet, right? So converting it into IP packets, sending that signal from your camera over the internet into a server, physical server, or a cloud server, and outputting SDI, or in this case tonight in our demo, NDI, to a broadcast output, right? Or even to a CDN or to web, right? We can even do H.264, H.265, or even to a cloud server. So one of the things that is a big piece of the NDI puzzle for us is our physical server. You have this up on the desktop here, and I'll be talking more about it in just a minute. We have two types of servers. The LU2000, which is a 1080 device that has single, dual, or quad output. It supports NDI, SDI, MPEG-TS, or RTMP. It actually can do all of those simultaneously. It also has support for audio IFB and can be managed with our web-based interface, what we call LiveView Central. And we also have a brand new unit called the LU4000, which is a 4K server that streams SD to 4K P60. It's a single 12G SDI output and can do HEVC encoding, supports audio IFB, etc. as well. So those are the two key elements you need in this NDI workflow to connect into the Newtek environment that we'll show in just a minute. So the typical LiveView NDI acquisition workflow is you have a field unit like our brand new LU300. It connects and bonds all of these connections that I mentioned with the streaming units. And then it sends the output to a server. The server then sends it into the TriCaster, whatever you're using, whether it's a Mini, TC1, you name it, that's the standard workflow. Another type of workflow that we offer is what we call a LiveView multi-camera workflow, or even at-home production workflow, where you have multiple field units or encoders out in the field, like covering a sports event or just a multi-camera shoot at a corporate location maybe. And then you send it back to an LU2000 with multiple output, and then again back into NDI device on the TriCaster. So one of the examples I wanted to talk to you about, before I get there, this is the distribution workflow, and we'll actually show you this. I'll kind of just breeze through this slide, but we'll show you the distribution workflow. You can actually use a LiveView as part of transport out of a Newtek TriCaster, and we're actually going to show you this in a demo, so I'll skip past this slide for now. But a case study I have that's really a cool and unique one that uses this NDI workflow that we're talking about tonight is with a company called Cellular Media out of Miami. And they used 4 LU600s and an LU500 and 2 quad servers. And this was for the Western Amateur Open. It's a PGA Tour event, a lower tier event that had never been broadcast before. And this company was just a production company that worked out of their house. And the PGA wanted to do more events that never got to be broadcast and wanted to put them onto Facebook Live. So this company pitched the idea of doing our at-home production using the NDI workflow with Newtek. And they got hired to do the Western Amateur Open, which was in Chicago, Illinois, just in a suburb outside of Chicago. And they basically did it. And they sent 4 cameras up to cover the event. And the production was done in the guy's house out of Miami. So that's his front room in the middle there with the TriCaster TC1. He had replay, he had Chiron or CG, he had a whole bunch of other stuff. In his garage, he had a green screen for the reporter. And what they did was he went around and did the recording and the shooting of the golf tournament in Chicago. That was all sent back IP-based over LiveView's LU600s and 500s back to the Newtek system, back to our LU2000 connected via NDI, and they had a successful event sent out to Facebook. Here's a couple more pictures of the replay and everything else. And again, that's the LiveView at-home production workflow using the NDI protocol to keep everything in an IP-based production environment. Really cool workflow. I've used up all my time on my PowerPoints. I promised I wouldn't go long, so let's kind of demo it. So I'm hoping you can hear me off the mic going over here to talk. What cool technology. We have wireless? Oh my God. All right. So let me bring my colleague over here. His name is Kung T. And we've got a couple of units that we're going to show you tonight. And Kung is wearing the fashionable LU600 backpack. Come on over here, Kung, and let me show you. Now, this is an example of what we call the LU600. Spin around here. Look at this. Kung, very fashionable there. This is the LU600 backpack. This is a 7-modem unit, has dual SIMs in it. And this unit, dual SIMs basically means the A slot has domestic SIMs. You can stream anywhere you want in the U.S. And the B SIMs are slots where you can stream anywhere outside of the U.S., and you don't have to go looking for local modems and things of that nature. But this is the unit he's going to be streaming from, and actually he's live right now. You can see using this high-end Sony 4K $10,000 camera that he got from Keycode Media. No, just kidding. Just kidding. That's our demo camera that we take around. But he's going to walk around, do some streaming, and what the workflow is right here is he's actually, the signal is being sent right now from that camera to this server, our one RU LU2000. This is the unit right here. And this is going straight out NDI from the back here, Ethernet, right into Chris's TC1. And Chris is able to take that signal, and now he's outside doing so. Look at this. Oh, and Matt is a doorman. I didn't know Matt did that. He's getting paid extra wages tonight. Thank you, Matt. But he's able to actually send that signal over to the 2000. That 2000 then sends it, again, over IP directly into the TC1. Chris can be an amazing TD, and he can go crazy and do amazing effects. He can do whatever. Look at that. Did you see that? You can hire him for your next show to do anything you want, just like that. So that's really the ingest workflow. It's really simple. You can send multiple units. You can have LU600s, 300s, different devices, send them to the server, and it's really just a clean, straight workflow. It can be SDI, but in this case, it's NDI. Again, multiple outputs. This is a single SDI server, by the way, and on a single SDI server, you can do 6 output of NDI. So that's an amazing, nice feature about NDI that most people didn't know. And somebody from over here is, yes, it's a 6-channel box for NDI, but only single SDI. So it's a pretty cool thing. Now, the other thing we wanted to showcase tonight that is important to point out, although it doesn't really tie to NDI, but I just wanted to end with this and turn it back over to Chris, was LiveView is part of a secondary workflow, especially in a Newtek environment. We're part of this output workflow. So all of LiveView always goes in to an input workflow with Newtek, and we do it seamlessly, and the NDI, as you saw, is very easy to use and just goes straight in. We have our other unit here, which is the LU300. This is a small form factor 4-modem unit, not 7 like the backpack Kung was wearing. Very small clip-on unit. It could be Anton Bauer mount, B mount, you name it. But it's a smaller unit. Has all the same features as the larger unit, or not all of them, but a little bit less features, actually. But what's nice about this is what we've done is taken the output of the TriCaster, connected it to this, and have decided to send the output to Facebook Live. So if you're in the field, let's say you have a fly pack or you're doing a shootout where there's no internet connectivity, you're in the at a location where you're filming a concert, or you're at a hotel or a convention center and you don't want to pay for the internet drop, right? It costs $8,000 or something. You can take a LiveView unit and use us as transport, bonded transport with connectivity with multiple carriers, right? And take the output of the TriCaster, switch it, switch your feed from a multicam shoot, and send it to a CDN like Facebook Live or YouTube or wherever your destination is, your client's website, and we can be the bonded cellular transport. I mean, we all know Newtek already has an output, right? You can plug into an Ethernet and send it out, no problem. But when you're in that situation, maybe a convention center, a hotel ballroom, or in a place, again, in a field where you're doing a concert or some other venue like that, where you don't have that connectivity, LiveView can be there for an output source in a Newtek environment. So that concludes my presentation. I want to thank you very much for having us here and allowing us to be here tonight. And I'll turn it back over to Chris. And again, thank you. I'll be here for questions after.
Thanks, George. That was amazing. Obviously, the difference we're seeing there, that's Facebook encoding, right? If I switch the output on this system, now I'm looking at the LiveView backpack, now we got to wait for Facebook to encode this stuff. So this is a cool workflow and some live NDI stuff. We're pretty NDI centric in this facility. Just to showcase how NDI centric we are, I'm gonna go back to my PowerPoint. I don't know if any of you guys saw, I pulled the HDMI out of that computer, right? How many of you guys are confident in doing this in the middle of your production? Taking this guy out, and now I'm still going through my presentation because everything here is powered by NDI. We're gonna get to NDI tools in a second. One of the things I would love to do is actually bring in a TriCaster into my TriCaster. So if I wanted to do something sort of go in the rabbit hole, if you will, I can actually come and go and show you the TriCaster interface to the TriCaster in the back of the room. That's a VMC1. This is everything they have going on. Dan, can you like roll the audio, roll like an audio fader up and down? Cool, and this is what we're going out streaming, recording. These are the kind of things you start to be able to very easily do in NDI. When we're done with this presentation, I want you to come back to the system here and see how many SDI cables are going into this thing. We have 2 SDI cables coming out of it. One of them sitting in the LiveView so we can go to Facebook. And the other one we ran just in case. Someone wants a just in case back, you know, belt and suspenders. Hey, just in case we have that. We are using no SDI connectivity in any of this workflow. This is very live applications of NDI. What this is useful for, and this may be a little complex, and I'll get to it in the presentation, is because I can access my interface, I can now take this and put this on any computer in my facility and actually KVM control this TriCaster without having any physical hardware. I pay $0 for a complete KVM system that goes to any system in my, anything that can access a website can run this stuff. This is some pretty cool application. I'm going to go back to my presentation now. But we're really deep in the full NDI ecosystem here. Check. I want to talk about some basic NDI stuff you guys should all be working with. We make a bunch of free NDI tools. They're on our website. How many people have NDI tools downloaded right now? 2 of you. Cool. If you want to test if your facility is NDI ready today, you have to spend $0. Download our toolkit onto 2 computers in your environment. Use Studio Monitor on one of them. This is our Rockstar application. Studio Monitor does a bunch of functions for free. Put that on one computer, and then run Scan Converter on the other computer. Scan Converter will take the desktop or the laptop and turn it into an NDI feed, and Studio Monitor will view that NDI feed. If you can do that today in your facility, you can run an NDI ecosystem in your facility, changing none of your hardware today. Studio Monitor, for free, does a couple of cool things. First of all, you can run multiple instances on your computer, so you could have your own built-in multi-viewer. So if you've ever done a production multi-viewer, run a bunch of cables to a very expensive $3,000 monitor, and done all that, you can do this all today for free in NDI. It will do video, audio, and do an overlay. So if you want to do your own picture-in-picture, you could do that in Studio Monitor. You can remote record today PTZs, and if you trigger an NDI device that has recording, it will tell that device to start recording on its local drive. In NDI 4.0, we will completely change what you're able to do in recording. The short story is, if it's an NDI feed, you will be able to record it. We can support multi-monitor video, so you can use this for wall signage and things like that. And it is currently configurable from your phone. You can get a mobile device to configure this guy. We talked about Scan Converter. I am a huge proponent of esports and gaming. This device, this free application solves all of your gaming needs, because all the games run at weird resolutions and different monitor setups and however you want. NDI Scan Converter will capture that and present it to any NDI source if it needs to. It also currently will do up to 60 hertz. It's actually, it'll do up to 144. This slide's a little old. So we keep pushing the NDI technology. Again, free. Virtual input. Have you ever had to put a production onto something like Zoom or GoToMeeting or Google Hangout? Virtual input will convert NDI into a webcam to then present to that presentation. So now I'm no longer just doing a traditional PowerPoint. I'm doing a full-scale production into one of these services. That's also available for free. A VLC plugin. How many times are you doing a production if you have sponsors and someone brings a sponsor roll 5 minutes after the show started? How are we going to ingest this video? How are we going to play this thing out? What are we going to do? run VLC. If you're unfamiliar with VLC, it will play any kind of video in the world. If VLC can't play it, you probably didn't want to play it in the first place. VLC is free, the plugin is free. Hit play on the VLC player, it is playing on your TriCaster. It is playing in your NDI environment. No transferring, no transcoding, hit play. We've talked a lot about early NDI adopters. The Adobe Creative Cloud has a free plugin that will take the same concept we just discussed and let you play off of your Premiere timeline into NDI. So if your editor needs to make some kind of change to a lower third in a piece of B-roll content, something that you guys did in post, and you want to play that out into NDI, well, someone's name's wrong. Let's say it's the CEO of the company. Let's say you spell Mike Kavanaugh's name wrong, right? That's the end of your contract if he sees that. If he sees his name up, the corporate sponsor's not happy, right? Well, now with your, what's up? So now, instead of having to worry about re-rendering that video, go into your Premiere timeline, change the name, and hit play on that video. It'll play out to the NDI. Some other cool things we have is After Effects for graphics. So you can render full motion graphics, push those in NDI with alpha, because NDI can push alpha. And Character Animator. Awesome if you're an educational institution, you just want to have a fun time with the kids. We've actually had guys Skype into meetings using NDI, using the Adobe Character Animator to pretend to be their webcam. Real fun, real cool applications for that stuff. Again, free. Access Manager. I have a complex network. I need to get NDI across it. Chris, you haven't discussed that. Access Manager does it for free. It will get your NDI to cross subnets. There's a lot of text on there. Within a very short amount of time, this application is going to grow as you start to introduce new features. It can act like its own discovery server. But right now, this is your general purpose way to get NDI over your complex network. Another cool feature that this thing does is, let's say I have 3 production facilities, and I have NDI going across all of them. That's going to be a lot of sources. We're talking about 500 sources potentially. If I want to silo this room so all the NDI talks within this room, I can make an access group that only these guys talk to. So we could have everyone talk very freely back and forth, or we could just say, hey, NDI in Studio A and NDI Studio B, they're separate, they don't cross over. We do that all for free. If you're an engineer, you want to get some test patterns on, bars and tone, we got that in NDI. Obviously, we support that NDI HX. We give you the driver for free so you can access all the products, so you can integrate those into your workflow. I'm going to pause here because this is probably going to be the newest information you guys are going to hear, which is about Premium Access. Premium Access is something that we've introduced to all TriCasters, and it gives all these new contemporary cutting-edge features. These are things that Newtek works on that are available in TriCasters, TC1s, VMCs, TriCaster Minis, TC410s, and it has a bunch of cool features we're going to highlight. Here's the graphic for Premium Access. We got a couple things we're going to go over. We're going to go over live graphics, live panel, and the virtual, the NDI KVM. But while we're here, and later if you want to see this in action, you can ask me, with NDI's virtual PTZ capabilities, I can take a 4K source into a 1080 session and virtually pan in on a portion of that image, and now I turn a 4K source into a 1080 source, and I'm presenting that into my NDI ecosystem. So any source on your network can now be virtual, can now have a virtual PTZ. So if you're doing live sports and you have a really nice camera that's doing 4K, and you want to get the golfer mid-swing, you can virtually pan into that source. It's amazing. Oh, yeah, there you go. That's virtual PTZ running in the background because my source is NDI to them. Live graphics. I'm sure if you're familiar with Newtek, we used to have this thing called LiveTech. We still have it. It's still supported to today. But LiveTech has sort of grown long in the tooth, if you will. It's been around for a long time. With live graphics, we have sort of completely changed the game on how graphics can work in your NDI ecosystem. Live graphics leverages the same building tools that Adobe Creative Cloud uses today. If your graphics are built in Premiere, you can use live graphics. With a caveat being, instead of rendering your graphics on your Adobe machine, you render them to the TriCaster's buffer. So you're not doing any of the heavy lifting. You send it to the TriCaster, and now the 10 frame buffers of the TriCaster just became full motion graphics. I'll be able to showcase that at the end of the show here and actually show you some live graphics. If you're familiar with live text, similar to live text, live graphics lets you edit those graphics on the fly. So you spelled the guy's name wrong? Well, you can change that in the system. You don't have to wait to re-render the clips out. It's got some built-in automation features that make it really slick. It is the Premiere and ease of production. It also will lower the bar of entry to your graphic today. Maybe you know a Chiron guy. Maybe you know a Viz guy. Maybe you know a particular piece of the production, like 1 or 2 guys who know how to do that graphics platform. Almost every college today has an Adobe Creative Cloud license. The students today, you need to get somebody, they'll be able to use this product and create whatever kind of graphics you want. Live Panel is another beautiful piece of software we make. It's a DIY software control panel. We'll showcase Live Panel up here if you guys want to see it. The short story is it lets you, with a web browser, access every feature of the TriCaster remotely and build a custom software control panel. If you want to control your TriCaster from an iPad accesses the web page, you can control your TriCaster with a touchscreen. If you want to control your TriCaster from your phone, Live Panel. This is all part of premium access, which if you get a new system today, you get 6 months of premium access for free. Then we can do a monthly or yearly subscription beyond that. So this is all part of this awesome set of features. If you have users who scale from public access all the way to broadcast, you're going to want to have some aspect of Live Panel in your production. It's very, very slick, great for automation. Last but not least, we covered this earlier, NDI KVM. Any PC1, VMC1, or a product we don't have shown here, but the NC1 IO module can be accessed for free with NDI KVM. So that studio monitor application we talked about earlier, the entirely free application, you can actually go in there and pull the user interface of the TriCaster. I'm so confident in that. I'm actually going to do that right now. I'm going to run studio monitor. Give it a second. We're going to see some NDI sources. Let's see. Oh, I actually already have it here. So this is the key code VMC user output. And then I can come in here and close. Dan, UK, if I switch something that's going live to the broadcast? All right, so I'm going to switch. So if you're watching us on the key code stream, you now see me there. I'm controlling that TriCaster over there. No hardware KVM between them, just the network cable, entirely free. I'm going to let go of control of that. Dan, you can take over again. I believe that's the end of my slideshow. I think that's pretty much where we're at. We showcased some NDI live. We talked about NDI 101. I now leave it open to questions. We have a million different NDI products around. We have a VMC in the back, an IP series if you want to see that. We have Spark, we have PTZs. We have the new Spark Plus that a lot of people haven't seen, not in the wild. We can now talk about NDI 4.0. Thanks, guys.